Stop nagging about housework and do your job.
My husband's harsh words in response to my simple requests. All I wanted was to walk through life together as a couple. If this is it, what's the point of being married? In the midst of my despair, my husband suddenly changed. Maybe this could lead to the marital life I've always dreamed of. But it turned out to be wishful thinking on my part. I should never have trusted his words. My name is Amy Watson. I'm 43 years old. I met Harry on a business trip a few years ago, and now we're married, living together. We had a long-distance relationship, requiring flights to see each other. Both busy with work, we rarely met, but after several years, we managed to marry.
I'll definitely make you happy.
I'll never forget his proposal. I never thought I'd marry such a wonderful man. Back then, he was very charming and popular with women. I might be biased, but I was thrilled he chose me. Given the distance, I moved to live with him, starting our married life. However, I couldn't quit my job, so I transferred to another branch. Because, frankly, my husband didn't earn much. Whether it was his company's low pay or his lack of promotions, his salary was just too low. If I quit my job, we couldn't live. Initially, my husband wanted me to be a housewife, but gradually he stopped commenting on my work as he faced reality. Years later, this hasn't changed. We both work to barely make ends meet. But a significant event changed our lives. It was my husband's attitude. Initially kind, he gradually revealed his true self over time. It started with small things, not clearing the dishes after meals. Hey, could you put away the dishes after eating?
Sorry.
He'd agree when I asked, but soon forget. Is it okay to leave the dishes?
Yes.
We had planned to share household chores, but once married, he hardly did any. Always finding excuses. I thought he must be tired, so I didn't press too much about chores. But honestly, he finishes work earlier than me and seems to have it easy. He even said his job was simple. Conversely, my job is demanding and keeps me busy every day. Handling both work and household chores is tough. I thought he could help me a bit more. Finally reaching my limit, I decided to have a serious talk with him. Hey, about the housework, could you help out a bit more? I'm getting tired too. Then he suddenly changed his expression. It was clear he was angry.
All right, I got it,
he said, his voice filled with anger. At that time I didn't mention it, but I wondered why he was so upset. Since that day, my husband's attitude has drastically changed. The reason is clear. It's because I asked him to help with the housework. Looking back, I guess he only sees me as a convenient housekeeper. One day, when I returned home from work as usual, the house was filled with the smell of alcohol. Feeling disgusted, I went to the living room. Opening the door, I found my husband lying on the sofa, surrounded by empty alcohol cans. He probably didn't go to work. Hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? I approached my drunken husband and asked. He opened his eyes, glaring sharply at me.
You're so annoying.
Annoying? He answered irritably and closed his eyes again. But seeing him so lost in alcohol, I couldn't help but worry. Did he fall into some kind of mental illness without me knowing? Or did he turn to alcohol? Hey, what's with all this alcohol? To this question, he opened his eyes again and said,
That's why I'm telling you to shut up. What I do is none of your business.
But... As I tried to argue, he got up from the sofa and started yelling at me. Slurring his words, he hurled insults at me and then went back to his room. Why do I have to be spoken to like this just for being concerned? Alone in the living room, I sat for a while and then cleaned up the empty cans and snack bags he had left behind. Then one day, something else happened. It seemed like a deliberate act of harassment against me. Laundry and dishes were intentionally scattered around. Many dishes were broken, some of which were my favorites. After that incident, I knew immediately it was my husband's doing. I wanted to talk to him, but he seemed to be out. Probably drinking, as his work should have ended by then. So, he deliberately came home just to mess up the room. How sinister! I quickly called him, but he didn't answer. Reluctantly, I sent a text and got a reply immediately. Maybe he thought I'd talked too much over the phone. The text was brief.
It read, "I'm not coming home tonight."
No destination, no explanation of what he was doing. So, what should I do? Should I just stay quiet and obey what he says? Is it all my fault? I feel sad, helpless. I did the right thing, and yet, what should I have done? Thinking this, I cleaned up the mess scattered around the room. Looking back, I noticed scratches on the floor. I'll probably remember this day whenever I see them. The next day, my husband returned home as he said he would. His steps were unsteady, and he reeked of alcohol. "Hey, what were you doing? I was worried about you." Frustrated by his lack of greeting, I couldn't help but ask in an angry tone. To that, my husband replied,
"What I do is none of your business."
"We're married. It is my business." Upset by his attitude, I pressed further, but he just glared at me and went back to his room. I couldn't help but sigh. Was the man I married always this difficult? Where did things go wrong? Thinking about it made me cry uncontrollably. But I'm not giving up. If I keep trying, maybe he'll understand what I'm thinking. Maybe he'll spend the weekends with me. Maybe help with chores. I won't ask for much. Just want him to be in a better mood. Holding on to that hope, I keep talking to him. "How was work today? Tough? Dinner is pot au feu." But his response wasn't good. Ignoring me was the norm. He often clicked his tongue and glared at me. It seemed impossible to mend our relationship with him acting like this. Lately, he wouldn't even eat the meals I prepared. I started questioning our relationship. Should I continue this marriage? Would it be better to let him have his freedom? These thoughts only brought negativity. As a last resort, I made a plea to my husband. "Please, don't ignore me." To my surprise, he suddenly apologized.
"Sorry."
I was stunned. I never expected him to apologize. And then,
"I'll start helping with the housework."
"Really?"
"I've been wrong about a lot of things."
Saying that, he actually patted my head. It had been years since he did that. Skeptically, I thought it odd for him to suddenly change and apologize. Given his past actions, it was hard not to doubt. But I chose to believe he had a change of heart and felt overjoyed. After that, he really did help with chores. Laundry, cooking, cleaning. Sometimes he'd finish everything before I got home. I never knew he could cook. Sitting across from a smiling husband, we enjoyed our meals together. He also became more invested in his work. He started doing overtime he never did before and studying for qualifications, often staying late at the office. "How's work going recently?"
It's going well,"
he said with a smile. We were spending more time together, and it felt like we were newlyweds again. But there was one thing that bothered me. He said he was working overtime, but there was no extra pay. It's hard to say without prior experience, but this could indicate a serious issue with his work environment. "Hey, don't you get paid for overtime?" When I asked, he said,
"Oh, it's voluntary study overtime. I haven't applied for it."
"I see." Financially, I wished he would apply for overtime pay, but maybe he felt hesitant. I don't know much about his company, so it wasn't my place to say. For now, I decided to support his decision. However, I would later also regret accepting this change so easily. One day, I was assigned to a business trip. I had left home for a day before, but this time it would be for a week. I felt excited but also nervous and lonely. When I told my husband about the trip, his reaction was unexpected.
"A business trip? How many days?"
Usually he showed little interest in my trips and never asked how long I'd be away. But this time, he seemed genuinely interested and even asked about the duration. I thought, maybe he's really changed and started to value our family. It made me feel glad I married him. From the week after next for a week."
"Okay, the week after next,"
he said and started looking at his calendar on his mobile phone. I didn't know the details, but it seemed his schedule had become busier. Maybe he was getting more work or becoming more relied upon at his job.
"Got it. The week after next. Take care."
"Yeah, thanks." That was our conversation. Then, on the morning of the departure, I informed my newly reformed husband about various household things. The supermarket where you can buy cheap groceries. How to iron clothes. I also told him where to find small daily necessities so he wouldn't struggle. "Well, I'm off. Call me if you need anything."
Thanks."
With that, I left for my business trip. That night, After finishing work and returning to my hotel, I surprisingly received a message from my husband.
How's work?
Good, it's going smoothly. After a trivial exchange, I texted goodnight and closed my mobile phone. I wondered how he was doing, if he was feeling lonely. Thinking about this, I began preparing for the next day's work. About a week later, my job ended successfully and I was ready to return home. Luckily, I finished a day earlier than planned. If no urgent work came up, I would have tomorrow off. On my way home, feeling happy, I decided to stop by the supermarket to cook dinner. What to make? Curry? Stew? That's when I remembered we might be out of oil. And then I realized I hadn't told my husband I was coming home early. Would he be shocked if I returned suddenly? I messaged him to check if we had oil and also mentioned I was coming home early from my business trip. But even after I finished shopping, there was no response from him. Could he be at work? Maybe working overtime again? Not wanting to disturb him, I stopped myself from sending another message and queued at the checkout. It's always good to have extra oil, after all. On my way home from the store, my husband called.
Hey, are you on your way home now? Where are you?
He sounded panicked. Was something wrong? Yeah, I'm in the apartment elevator now. When I told him that, he hung up without saying anything else. What was going on? Worried, I hurried to our apartment. I'm home. Harry, are you okay? No response. Harry! As I was taking off my shoes to enter, my husband came from the living room in a rush and collapsed. Are you okay?
I'm in pain. Call an ambulance,
he said, clutching my hand. I immediately grabbed my mobile phone and called an ambulance. The ambulance arrived within minutes. I led the paramedics into our apartment and they started attending to my husband. Was he going to be okay? What would happen to him? As I was anxiously watching, I noticed something. There was an unfamiliar woman's bag. Certainly not the paramedic's bag. Not mine either. I felt a lump in my throat. Then, looking towards the living room window, I saw unfamiliar women's underwear hanging there. Could my husband be having an affair? Thinking back, his panicked reaction when I called was definitely strange. Was he trying to hide his affair? I tentatively looked around the apartment, pretending to gather things from my husband's hospital stay to avoid suspicion. Living room, bathroom, kitchen, but nothing else. The bag was there, so unless the woman had escaped out of the window, she must still be here. Finally, I went to the shower room, and to my surprise, the light was on and I saw a shadow. I opened the door and looked at the bathtub. I couldn't believe what was happening in front of me and wanted to look away. The realization that my suspicions were true was something I didn't want to think about. I wish I had been wrong about the bag and the underwear. I went back to the entrance, and then this conversation happened with the paramedics.
Your family, right? Please come with us.
Sorry, my mistake.
What?
The paramedic sounded surprised at my response. My husband also seemed shocked. Ignoring them, I brought the woman from the shower room to the entrance. This woman is family, so she'll come along. Wait a minute! The woman was flustered as I said this. The husband, clearly surprised, suddenly sat up with effort.
You what?
The paramedics calmed my agitated husband. Actually, this man seems fine. What do you think?
Well, yes, his condition doesn't seem bad.
Eventually, it was decided that my husband didn't need emergency care, and if he felt worse, he should go to the hospital. The room fell silent after the paramedics left. So what's going on here? I sat my husband and the woman down in front of me and demanded an explanation. At first, they were silent, looking uncomfortable, but they gave up as I silently waited. My husband began to speak.
I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. This girl is a junior from work. We're just close, but nothing inappropriate happened.
After his words, the junior spoke up. That's right, we were just having a meeting. Nothing inappropriate. To claim such things now. Do you need to take a bath and hang your underwear for a meeting? What's going on? I pointed to the underwear hanging in the living room. The two exchanged looks, realizing their mistake. The truth was already clear. If you have time to make up excuses, just tell me the truth. Pressing them further, my husband confessed everything.
I'm really sorry.
Sorry isn't enough. Was all the overtime a lie? It turned out, my husband and his junior became involved after we got married. He started the affair because I nagged about housework. But then the junior complimented him on being a man who could do housework, so he tried harder. The increased overtime was just to meet her. I noticed the junior looking almost triumphant. That's why there was no overtime pay. He wasn't even trying to get any qualifications. It was all just talk. I understand what you're thinking. Let's just get divorced. Please be with that woman. I was so dismayed that I proposed divorce. It wasn't a threat. I couldn't forgive the deception. But my husband wouldn't agree.
Divorce isn't the answer,
he protested. To top it all off, he said,
if you had properly told me you were coming home, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, coming back suddenly is just unfair, the junior added. Had I been fooled by my husband's act all this time? Thinking about it made me feel pathetic. Amy, Harry is showing remorse, right? His affair partner was also desperately trying to calm me down.
You don't really want a divorce, do you? You're just pushing the blame for your affair onto me.
Let's just end this. Let's divorce.
No, it's not like that.
The junior avoided my gaze, clearly uncomfortable.
Look at her sulking. You two should live happily together.
Sulking?
She tried to argue, but I cut her off. Yes, sulking.
Her expression became even more sullen.
Look, she seems to be repenting too. Shut up. Nothing you say will make me forgive you.
As I shouted, both of them shrunk back. What do we do from now on? They need to reflect on what they have done and said. Afterward, I hired a lawyer to start preparing for the divorce and claim compensation for the divorce trial. Throughout, there was no contact from my husband. Eventually, my in-laws reached out, asking what had happened. I told them everything and they apologized and agreed to help with the divorce. Eventually, my husband, looking exhausted, agreed to a consensual divorce after speaking with the in-laws. I made sure to claim compensation from the junior as well. She was reluctant at first, but ultimately complied with my request. I demanded a lump sum payment because I thought she might try to escape her responsibility. After the divorce, since my husband and the junior were from the same company, it quickly became known they had an affair. They were treated coldly by their colleagues and lost their place at the company. They also became targets of gossip, and the talk even reached their clients. Unable to handle the situation, both ended up leaving the company. I don't know if they married, but they must be struggling financially after paying me the compensation. I imagine them arguing over money issues. I moved to a new apartment shortly after. It's cheaper than my previous one, but much more comfortable. I remembered that I chose the old apartment based on my husband's preferences. Returning to my apartment, I sighed in relief that it was all over. All right. Since the divorce, I've been more focused on work and my performance has improved, leading to a promotion. I thought the divorce was a rash decision made in anger, but now I'm happy it's all over. It feels like a weight has been lifted. With these thoughts, I sipped my favorite tea, rejuvenating myself for tomorrow.